we're live here with some Sunday MLB DFS picks, lineup advice, strategy, live Q&A, FanDuel, DraftKings, Yahoo. It's Sunday, May 15th. Welcome, I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and I am joined by our MLB writer, Troy Clarder. Troy, what's up, man?
Yo, what's up? It's a nice big Sunday slate for us and lots of teams to choose from.
Dude, so many teams to choose from, and the team that's top in our model is not one that you see every single day, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. Troy and I are planning to be here for probably 20 to 30 minutes or so, depending on how many questions we get, which you see the live chat to the right of the YouTube screen. If you have any questions about today's MLB slate or just DFS in general, throw them in the chat. We will happily answer them. We'll talk about top pitching, stacks, and some lineup construction tips for today's slate. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Get notified when we go live, upload any new videos, and give us a thumbs up if you appreciate the MLB content. So, Troy, I guess I'll start by saying one thing we always like to look at is the weather, and it doesn't look like there are any weather situations so far, right?
Not that I'm seeing. Just checking on the weather here. Nothing that looks like we have any postponement or delay risks.
That's great to
And
hear. That's great to hear for sure. And
if you are on FanDuel playing the Coors Field game, the weather looks great there as well. Another hitting day there.
yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, Troy. But yeah, no, and that's the next thing I was going to bring up because as we were doing these streams and the plugs throughout the month of April, we barely, if ever, saw any positive weather environments for hitters. But as the weather starts to warm up a bit here, let me bring up the weather dashboard in the Occupy model. Let's bring it up here. Shows the weather for every game on the slate with adjustments for hitters. And yeah, a 16% boost for batters in Coors Field today. And that is something to know because that Coors Field game is not on the DraftKings main slate, so you don't have to worry about that. But a couple other 5% boosts across the league. So yeah, just something to keep in mind as you're building your lineups today. Troy, as I know the plug just went out, the daily plug, occupyfantasy.com. What's your initial read on this slate?
Yeah, so as I was mentioning earlier, today's kind of an interesting slate where on FanDuel, the Coors Field game is in play, but we don't actually have it on DraftKings. So it's really going to depend on which site you're on. On FanDuel, kind of as always, when there's a Coors Field game, that's going to be your main decision point as to if you're playing it or if you're fading it. And on DraftKings, you're going to have to look elsewhere for stacks in that slate.
Right, so no cores on DraftKings, and I guess we'll just start with let's start with pitching actually, because that's especially this year that seemed to be the place that you want to start most of your lineups. Verlander is on the slate, 10.3K on DraftKings, naturally tops the model. But Troy, as I bring up the pitching model at Occupy Fantasy right now, the first thing I notice is that yes, Verlander is top of the model, but he's not with a 18, 19, 20 plus OF index like we've seen in his last couple of starts. So yes, he is a great play today, but it doesn't look like he's as good of a play as he has been recently.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at the model as well, his strikeouts per innings pitched is just barely above 1, and that's probably what's leading to his good but not elite projection number. Strikeout rate is only 25% this year, so that is down compared to where he was at throughout most of his career. If you're looking for more of a high-risk option, we have Alek Manoah with a much higher K rate, as well as Michael Kopech leading the slate with his strikeout projection. So if you're playing high-risk contests, those might be two options you're looking more towards to get some strikeouts for tournaments. But if you're playing low-risk, Verlander is a great option. He is the biggest favorite on the slate.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? Like no huge favorites. Some of the recent slates we've had minus 200 favorites or greater. Verlander just minus 182 today. So a sizable favorite, but not a lock by any means. Also, I see the team total moving against him. So I know you follow baseball pretty closely, Troy. Any reason for Verlander's lowered strikeout percentage this year? Is it just age, or do you think there's anything else at play there?
Yeah, I mean, he's 39 years old. He's coming off, he missed all of last year and basically all of 2020, so he really just hasn't pitched that much. And, he's still a good pitcher, but I don't think he's one of the best pitchers in the league like he used to be.
And I think that's fair, for sure. So we got Manoah number 2, Kopech number 3, and then it's a great pitching slate. We got Joe Ryan, Cortez, And I think Screwball is going to be another option, especially on DraftKings, that a lot of people are going to look towards. Just 6K, minus 148 favorite, one of the bigger favorites on the slate. Has a great K per innings pitch projection, lower opposing team total against my Orioles. But I have a feeling, I think someone in our Discord mentioned this, Troy, that they think Screwball's ownership will probably rise and be nearly double this on DraftKings. He's just 6K, so I'm curious to get your thoughts on him.
I completely agree. I think Scooble's way mispriced on DraftKings. Only 6K is pretty crazy. He's got a 2.41 FIP this year through 6 starts. He's really been dominating, and a lot of people around the industry peg Scooble as a breakout candidate this year, and it looks like he might be having that breakout season at only 25 years old.
Yeah, if
And
you
so
look,
to get him at an SP2 price on DraftKings is pretty crazy today.
yeah, man, 6K is nuts. And I imagine even people who are just game log watching, right? You see 20 plus points, 25 plus points in all but 2 of his starts so far this year. Yeah, does have the 2 starts of 2.2 DraftKings points and 3.9 DraftKings points, but that's against Minnesota and the White Sox, not the Orioles. So, yeah, I think he'll be a pretty popular option. So I imagine, Troy, the game plan for today, if you're playing on DraftKings, is Verlander or Manoah or Kopech plus Screwball. And the savings of Screwball should give you enough salary left over to stack pretty much whoever you want, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a good plan of attack as far as where to start with pitching.
Cool. And if we move over, well, actually, before we move over, any other guys that you're eyeing that you think either the model's not high on or we haven't touched on yet at pitcher?
Let's see. I do like Joe Ryan as well. He's more in the mid-range of prices, and I think he had a rough outing last time out. It was a really tough matchup against the Astros. And I think against the Guardians, who are second to last in our model, he's in a pretty good spot against them. And he is the favorite as well there.
Right. So looking at the stack dashboard, Cleveland, the second worst ranked stack. Ryan is a minus 148 favorite, like Screwball, over the 1 innings pitch projection that we're looking for. 1K per innings pitch projection that we're looking for. Honestly, dude, there's a lot of pitchers over that 1K per innings pitch mark today. All but 7 on the slate. So tons of strikeout upside. What about Quintana? I know we've joked in Discord about renaming the Cy Young Award after him with some of his strikeout performances this year. He's minus 141. Any love for him because he is 5,600. So
Yeah, I do think Quintana's probably in play just because he's facing the Reds. And I mean, they've been like brutal this year, and they do strike out a ton against left-handed pitching as well. So Quintana's not a great pitcher, but if you think he'll come in low owned, which it looks like we do have him at pretty low ownership here, he could be a good play on a big pitching slate.
So Quintana's on the mound for the Pirates. So that's a great transition to our top stacks of the slate, which I alluded to at the top of the show, Troy. Pittsburgh leads the stack dashboard in our model as the highest ranked 5-man stack on the entire slate, which is something you don't see really that often. But the betting markets are in agreement. They have the 4th highest team total of the entire day. That is the 2nd highest team total on the main slate on DraftKings. Their team total is moving nearly a third of a run since the lines opened. They're not going to be the most popular stack on the slate, it looks like. That honor should belong to either the Indians or the Orioles, it seems like, which is interesting. So, but again, Pittsburgh, talk to me about the stack and the hitting options that you can play with them.
Yeah, Pittsburgh topping the model is certainly not something you're going to see every day. I don't know if we're going to see it again all year, to be honest. It's going to take an outlier event like facing Hunter Green for that to happen. And Green is a rookie for the Reds who has just been getting blown up basically every time he goes out there. He has a 3.81 home run per 9,
God.
which is just atrocious. So if you ever want to play the Pirates, this might be your one time all year. So go and jam them in your lineups.
Love to hear that. And super cheap on both sites, right? On FanDuel, every hitter is below 3K. On DraftKings, every hitter is below 5K. And we got Reynolds, Vogelbach, Gamble, Van Meter, Tsutsugo. I mean, all of these guys hitting in the top 6, and so the correlation looks nice as well. Sometimes we get top stacks where some of the top hitters will be 8 or 9 hitters, or the batting order doesn't line up. But here, dude, it looks like 1 through 6, you can play these guys and get the correlation with the high upside.
Yeah, that's always great when you can get guys to fit in like that. I know on DraftKings they do have 2 first base eligible players with Vogelbach and Sasugo. So if you want to go down to Jack Sawinski or fill in your catcher spot with Michael Perez, that works as well.
That's all, like one of the most tilting things when you're making lineups for baseball, especially on DraftKings when you get like 3 third basemen from the same team. Here we got 2 first basemen. I have literally never heard of Jack Sawinski until this moment. Do you have any insight on who this guy is?
I don't have a ton, but he's got a great matchup.
There, and that's all we need, right? So Jack Sawinski, if you're gonna play Vogelbach at first base for their Pirate stacks, and you can't play Tsutsugo, you can drop down to Jack Sawinski. Keep that correlation. So, let me see. We got Dot Best in the chat. What's going on, guys? Question real quick on the model. What does the ownership represent when it shows on the stack page? So, in short, that is just the cumulative ownership for every hitter in that stack. So if we see here, let's go to the stack dashboard, and we see the Indians 80% cumulative DraftKings ownership. That just means if you take their 1 through 9 hitters, all of their ownership added up will add up to 80%. So really, we're just looking at, in totality, how popular an entire 9-man lineup would be. And obviously, there's nuances to that. The top 5 hitters may carry more ownership than the bottom 4 hitters. But in general, this gives you a pretty good idea on who will be popular today. So good question, Bets. If you guys have any other questions, let us know. We got Mr. Raby in the chat, says Van Meter coming. Yeah, Josh Van Meter, an Occupy favorite for sure. Always ranks highly in our model dating back to last year's time with the Diamondbacks. So get him in your Pirates stack today. Troy, all right, outside of the Pirates, if you don't want to subject yourself to a Pittsburgh stack, I see we got Houston ranked near the top, Toronto, but a lot of lower owned stacks. I'm curious to get your thoughts outside of Pittsburgh, what the state of stacks look like for this slate.
For sure. So ownership is pretty flat overall, at least on DraftKings. And so there's a lot of different ways you could go. And one team I like a lot in particular is Toronto on the slate. They don't have a very high team total. And they're facing Tampa Bay, who looks like they're using an opener in Jeffrey Springs. And I like Toronto a lot in this spot because anytime I can get like one of the elite lineups that's coming in at low ownership because of their team total, sometimes I like playing them like kind of regardless of matchup, because when they do have a good matchup, it'll be massive chalk. But when they don't have a great matchup, that'll lead to low ownership. And just because they're a really good lineup with a lot of good players, I kind of think it's like, you can kind of fade the matchup and just play guys like Vlad Guerrero and George Springer and Bo Bichette. And if you're getting them at low ownership, I mean, they can go off on any given night regardless who they're facing.
I mean, that's a great point. That's a really great point, especially in an opener situation where we don't know how long Springs is going to go. And if they get to him early, now we're getting to some of the depth guys in the Tampa Bay bullpen. I'm curious to get your thoughts there too, because opening situations or bullpen games are always tough to pinpoint from a projection standpoint, because we don't know who's going to pitch, how long they're going to pitch, and there's such a wide range of outcomes for how the opposing team is going to hit and the matchups that they're going to face. So I kind of agree with you there. If you get a team that has such high upside like Toronto, and the model's picking up on this just in general, right, because they are such good hitters, just because they're facing Springs for maybe 4 innings, that could be 2 innings, it could be 1 inning, it could be 6 innings. We really don't know. So are you more likely to lean towards stacking teams that are facing a bullpen game? Or I guess I'm just wondering how you handle those situations.
Yeah, bullpen games are always tough because, it depends a lot on the quality of the bullpen, and there's just no way to know who's going to come in, if they're going to play matchups or if they're just going to bring in a bulk reliever for the majority of the game. So it really depends on the lineup, and like in this case, when you're getting one of the best lineups in the league, I would definitely play it.
Yeah, I can't argue that. Again, let me look at all these guys, right? You got Teoscar, Springer, Guerrero, Bichette, Chapman, just an absolutely loaded lineup. And, got the shortstop eligibility of Bichette. That helps with stacking some as well. So you got to like that. I think that's a really good call. Let's go back here. Let's go back to the stack dashboard. Houston, Chicago, Milwaukee round out the top 5. Any other teams outside of Pittsburgh and Toronto stand out to you, whether from it's a value standpoint or just an overall upside standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that Washington is rating decently in the model against Justin Verlander, and they're not a team I would play in most contests, but if you're playing in like super large field, like lotto type contests, um, stacking against a really popular pitcher can be, if it goes well, which it normally won't, but if on the off times where it does go well, you're going to gain a lot of leverage on the field by not only your stack doing well, but everybody else's SP1 doing terribly. So I wouldn't recommend it for most contests, but you could at least consider Washington for this afternoon.
I really like that call because you got Verlander pushing 50% ownership on DraftKings. We'll see where he ends up on FanDuel. And, stacking against the most popular pitcher just for the sake of stacking usually doesn't work out unless it's like a really small slate and you're just purely playing the game theory. On these larger slates, you have to have a pretty legitimate reason. And we talked about his lowered strikeout potential this year. That's always great for opposing stacks. And then the model does pick up on it some, as do the betting markets, because as we hit on when we talked about Verlander, the team total for Washington has moved plus 0.31 runs since lines open. So someone is picking up on something on the Washington side for offense. So I really do like that call if you're playing the super large field contest. Let's see. Another question in the chat says, and this is a general question and maybe not just specifically for today, but if you're stacking the Pirates and the Orioles, is it smart to go for value on pitching in the same lineup or just go for the studs? Troy, I guess this is a question of if you're playing some of the unpopular lineups, what do you generally go for pitching? Because for me, I would say that if you're playing unpopular stacks, and in general, right, the pitchers are so much easier to project that you're okay playing the chalkier options there. But just give me your thoughts on that kind of situation when you're playing some of these lower owned stacks.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brian. In general, when I'm looking at pitchers, I'm pretty ownership agnostic. Really, where you're going to get the main benefits of having low ownership is with your stacks, and it's not as much with pitching because, like you said, pitchers have such a large sample size compared to hitters on a certain slate. If you have a hitter, he'll come up 3 or 4 times. If you have a pitcher, he's facing way more batters than that. So it's fine to play into some chalk, and if you can get really good pitchers into your lineup with a low owned stack, go for it.
I like that as well. I think that's a really smart approach, and that's generally the approach we've been preaching on these streams and in the plug pretty much all season so far. So a good question there, Bob. Appreciate that. All right, guys. Any further questions? Let us know. We'll be here for about I don't know 5-7 more minutes. Wrapping up the slate. We're still waiting for some lineups to come in, so make sure you continue to check the model to make sure we get the confirmed lineups in. It is a Sunday. I know we get some different lineups on Sundays, so just ensure that all your guys are in the lineups today. Let's see, Troy. I mean, so 8 games on the slate, relatively small for a Sunday slate, right? Normally we get 10 plus games, but just 8 games on DraftKings. We do get 10 on FanDuel. This season, I haven't personally talked to you about this yet, so I want to get your thoughts. We see all the talk about are the balls different this year? Home runs are down in April. Scoring has been down. We've seen some scoring explosions here over the last couple of days, but any opinion on what you think is going on with hitting? Is it just a small sample? And does it affect our DFS decisions where if scoring is truly down for a legitimate reason, we don't have to stack as much because there's no benefit to when every team scores 5 runs?
Yeah, so I mean, there's no doubt that the offensive environment is down compared to other years. There hasn't been as much run scoring compared to other April and Mays, and most of that has to do with the fact that MLB implemented a humidor in all 30 ballparks this year, and the effect of that in the cold months is that offense will be down. But at least in theory, in the hotter months, so now that the weather is warming up, we should actually see more offense in a lot of ballparks because of the humidor. So with that reasoning, I think as the weather continues to warm up, I think we're going to finally get out of this offensive slump we've been seeing around the league. And for the sake of the sport, I hope so, because we've had some brutal nights. And so I still think the sample size is too small to be changing our strategy and not correlating as much. And I'd like to be proven otherwise until I make that decision. So as the weather warms up here in May, I wouldn't be too worried about the offensive environment.
That's super interesting. I had not heard about that cold versus warm weather difference. And again, if we look at today's slate, let's go back to the weather dashboard. If we sort by temperature today, right? Obviously, we have Arizona that's in a dome, Texas in a dome today, which I've never really understood. I will say, Troy, I don't know if you've been to Globe Life or Chase Field. It's probably pretty miserable sitting out there in 90-degree heat, right? So that's why they probably closed the roof. Prove me wrong. Have you been to either of those stadiums?
But I imagine before they had the roof in the old stadium, all the fans were just baking out in the sun. So I'm sure they like having the roof now.
So again, so 90s temperatures in Arizona and Texas, but the roof is closed there today. Dodgers, that's on the 4 p.m. slate. So the afternoon slate, we got some 90-degree weather, right? But then we have Miami, 85 degrees on the early slate. Tampa Bay's obviously in the dome. But then we have a bunch of games in the 70s: Detroit, Washington, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Colorado, like a bunch of and obviously Colorado Coors Field effect. So yeah, before if you looked at the April, right, we had games in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So maybe again, just an even more an even greater emphasis on looking at the weather when selecting your stacks if the humidor truly is having an effect like Troy just pointed out. So, all right, guys, a couple more minutes. We'll close out the show here. Troy, any final thoughts on the slate? Any other topics that we haven't discussed?
Just checking here. Looks like I covered most of what I wanted to. Any questions in the chat we got?
I think that's it. If you guys have any final questions, let's get them in here and we'll get them answered. Troy, I know I asked you when Moose and I were on with you last time about any rookies or minor leaguers that we're excited to see coming up over the next couple of months. Ken pointed out one as a potential Rookie of the Year bet, a pitcher in the National League back on Tuesday. Any updates? I know you play Dynasty and you play season long. Any other rookies you're excited to see here in the coming weeks?
Yeah, I know. Last time I was on the show, I nailed the Alec Thomas call. He's now in the majors and doing pretty well so far. So I have to follow that up with another good call. And one of my favorite prospects this year has been Miguel Vargas of the Dodgers. He's been crushing the ball in AAA, and the Dodgers have had their old guys kind of struggling with Justin Turner and Max Muncy. And if they continue to struggle or one of them gets hurt, I could see Miguel Vargas coming up into the majors and playing in that really good lineup and being a really good fantasy player. As far as the betting markets, we're sort of getting close to running out of time here where if you're not called up soon, you might not have a good shot at winning Rookie of the Year. But another guy who could get called up soon is Max Meyer, who I believe we may have mentioned before, who's been dominating in the Marlins system. And if he comes up, he might be a dark horse Rookie of the Year candidate as well. But these guys need to come up fast.
Yeah, I mean we're getting towards summer months here. Not much time to get your candidacy in for Rookie of the Year. Let me see here. I'm just gonna bring up the prop radar really quickly. We do have one more question while I'm bringing this up. Troy Bets asks, any love for Robbie Ray today?
Yeah. So Ray's an interesting one. He ranks like pretty low down in our model, as he's kind of been having a bad year, and regardless of the results, his strikeouts are way down from last year, which is even more concerning than him getting hit around. And he does have a pretty tough matchup against the Mets. So I don't love the play today, but I could see the case where, I mean, this guy's coming off the Cy Young last year. He could easily bounce back in one given start, and he certainly has the ceiling for it. So if you see something in Robbie Ray and you want to play him, I think it's an interesting low-owned spot, but from what the model says, I don't think it's somewhere that I'll be going today.
Yeah, I mean, we stacked against Robbie Ray literally every single slate last year. Dude wins a Cy Young. Now he wants to regress, so super tilted to see that. But going back to your Max Meyer point really quickly, I think this is the guy that Ken brought up on the Tuesday show. Yeah, you can still get him at 25-1 to win NL Rookie of the Year, so certainly worth a shot. I assume Suzuki is the favorite there for the Cubs for the NL Rookie of the Year, but if this guy comes up and dominates over the last half of the season, he could certainly sneak one out. And at 25-1, or I guess even at FanDuel 30-1, certainly worth a shot, Troy.
Yeah, I got some bets in on Suzuki early in the year, so if that holds, I certainly won't be mad. But it would be cool to see these other guys come up as well.
When you got Suzuki, was it roughly even odds, or were you able to get some decent plus money on him?
Oh yeah, I got plus money on him. It was very early in the season.
Oh, sick. Good work. Okay. All right. So 11:25. That'll do it for the show. Troy, we'll let you get out of here so you can build your lineups. I got to build my lineups as well. If you guys have any further questions, join our Discord server. Click the join button below this video. Chat with us, other members of the ActiveFantasy.com community. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, get notified when we go live, upload any new videos, and give us a thumbs up if you appreciate the MLB content. We're still doing these videos pretty much every single day of the week except for Saturdays, so make sure you are subscribed. You can follow Troy on Twitter at Troy Clodder. Follow me at Brian Jester FF. Troy, I'll let you get out of here. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, as far as final thoughts, like we said, picking a top starter in Verlander Manoa as well as a cheap SP2 on DraftKings, and then checking out some low end stacks should be a good formula for today.
You heard it there from Troy. That's the formula to get to the top of leaderboards. As always, we appreciate you listening, and good luck on today's MLB DFS slate.